People are probably wondering, what happened to Cedric Doumbe? What happened to now retired former Glory Kickboxing middleweight champion who was supposed to fight at home for the first France card? Where did the guy go? Why did he not fight in the UFC? And what is he doing now ever since September of last year? Well, he's actually been fighting. He's had one fight on the regional scenes over there in France because he was not allowed to fight on that France card. The reason as to why he was not allowed to fight Darian Weeks was basically because the commission over there said that Cedric Doumbe was not experienced enough to fight Darian Weeks. They decided not to sanction the fight because they believed the former Glory Kickboxing World Champion was not experienced enough in MMA to go up against Darian Weeks. The rule over there is any MMA fighter with less than 10 professional fights is not allowed to go up against an opponent that has at least 4 more or 4 less fights than they do. By that time, Cedric Doumbe was 2-0 in MMA, whereas Darian Weeks was 5-2, meaning that they had 5 fights in between each other. And because of that, the commission did not allow Cedric Doumbe to compete, and the logic as to why he'd probably get cut from the UFC or not allowed to fight for a little bit is for him to gain experience. They probably have plans for him to fight in France because he does have a big following over there from his kickboxing days, and no matter what, he's not going to have enough fights. So maybe they're waiting for him to have like 4 or 5 professional fights before they decide to put him back on. But here's an issue. He's now contemplating going to Bellator. Because of the French commission, we may have just missed out Cedric Doumbe to fight in the UFC's welterweight division. Completely, forever. Because they thought he wasn't experienced enough to go up against Darian Weeks. Now I understand if he's going to fight like Usman or Leon or someone like that, but Darian Weeks, nothing against him, but that was a good matchup to have. That was a good fight. And if we miss Cedric Doumbe with him going to Bellator and then him becoming like a Bellator world champion, like, man, that's gonna rub a lot of us the wrong way. We were so excited to see this kickboxing phenom shake up that welterweight division somehow. There are a lot of wrestlers, so it's not a good division for his style, but it would have been really entertaining regardless. And now he's blasting fools on the regional scene. He just fought Florent Burillon and Pawel Klimas. I probably pronounced that wrong, I'm so sorry. He knocked Burillon out in the first round and knocked Klimas out in the second round, while also showing great takedown defense in both fights. Let's break those fights down, man. What you notice right away is his opponent is taller than him. He's throwing a lot of kicks. He has more of a striker, which is going to cater to Doumbe's style. But regardless of what his opponent is doing, notice how Doumbe's stance is lower and he's like leaning over his front leg. He did this in both fights. The reason why he's doing this is he's very confident in the stand-up, right? His head is exposed to get hit, but the man doesn't care at all. He knows his strengths in this game is going to be above most other strikers. He has to be very cautious about the takedowns, right? With him leaning over his front foot like that, the opponent is going to have to shoot under his upper body, and it's going to allow Doumbe to see that shot from that distance, and he's going to be able to sprawl, which is actually what he showed in the fights. Amazing sprawls in both the Burillon and Klimas fights, and the takedowns are actually very similar between the two fighters, but I would say that Klimas' takedowns were a bit better. Still, good sprawls against both guys. This is the kind of stuff we really want to see because we know he's an excellent striker. He has a lot of power, he's very technical, and terrifying with his precision. Look how he brings that front leg away from the opponent. Look as soon as his opponent shoots. Doumbe has that low stance, he covers up high as Florent throws a jab and Doumbe reacts by guarding and slipping on the inside of it. So it actually seemed like a pretty decent attempt on the initial shot, but the follow through wasn't the greatest. Regardless though, Doumbe was onto it, man. He brings his front leg away very quickly, sprawls on top of the opponent, doing away with that takedown completely. And notice how he spins around, framing on the back of the head to force the opponent's posture down still so they can't really see what Doumbe is doing. And he tries to get that outside trip with that body lock, man. Even though the trip was not successful, I really liked his attempt here. It looked solid, it looked fluid, smooth on the transition, but it can be pretty hard to trip out a much taller opponent with long legs like that. And he didn't have the greatest follow through. Like, he had a good trip to knock the opponent's balance off, but he didn't have a good way to drag the opponent to the ground right afterwards. So there is definitely a lot to work with for Doumbe, but the fact that he's confident in even attempting something like this is very interesting. He actually spun around against Klimas as well when Klimas shot multiple times. His opponent Florent only shot 1 takedown, but Klimas shot like 5 and only got Doumbe to the ground with 1 of them. So as you can see right here, Doumbe is going forward with that long jab. Look how far he steps into it. He's actually making a big opening on himself for that takedown. But remember what we talked about, that Doumbe has a fast ability to take his lead leg away from you when you shoot. He He did the exact same thing here. Look at right here how hard he plants on that lead leg. All the weight is on top of it. You would think there's no way that Doumbe can get away from a takedown, but he does. Look how fast he takes his leg away and Klimas misses completely as Doumbe sprawls on top of him. Amazing sprawl, and then, just like I said before, spun around Klimas, getting away from any potential grip. He's thinking 2 steps ahead of his opponent. Good posture, good position, and controlling his opponent very well. This is actually very impressive from a kickboxer who hasn't been doing this that long. The next takedown was very obvious. He just shoots from a distance without really masking it. You know, he doesn't set it up at all. And Doumbe brings his lead leg away again and pushes down on the head to force his opponent to eat the canvas so he can walk away. And then for the third takedown attempt, Doumbe first lands some really good strikes. He throws a jab up high, gets right through the guard, showing that precision. And then notice how he fakes the right overhand. He leans on his front leg, shows his opponent his right shoulder, so his opponent is going to react. Look how big he reacts to the fake overhand. But what's open here? He's blocking so much up high. His body's completely exposed to anything. Doumbe takes notes, and he wings in a left hook to the body as opponent thinks something's gonna come up high. He actually sees the left hook pretty much when it lands though. Notice how he brings his right elbow down as soon as the punch lands, so it's too late. He has to bring it down before the punch lands. And that crushes the opponent to the liver, and he shoots a takedown. First, he actually feints up high with his left hand, but Doumbe does not react to it at all. It shows that he's not worried about the opponent striking. Faking like this is not enough to get a kickboxing champion like Doumbe off guard. You gotta have a better striking feint than just that. He sees a takedown coming and sprawls on top of it. You would think that he threw an uppercut, but it was actually open palm. He was merely focused on just defending the takedown, and that sprawl was massive. Look how big he sprawls, man. Leg up in the air and everything crashes down on the opponent's back, completely doing away with that takedown. And here's the fourth takedown attempt. A little bit of a feint with the left hand. Doumbe reaches forward. He actually reacts a bit to that feint there. He may have thought that his opponent was going to clinch up with him here, but he shoots under. Doumbe takes away that lead leg again. Notice how he almost like switches stances on his feet and again sprawls on top of the opponent, man. Those sprawls are really good. Those are going to defend a lot of guys' takedowns. Chain wrestling can still be a problem though. And then for the fifth takedown attempt, he actually gets Doumbe to the ground, and he does it a little bit differently where he was the one pressuring Doumbe backwards. Notice how Doumbe's back's close to the fence. This is very different than the other takedown attempts. And notice how his opponent actually switches stances forward. He switches from southpaw to orthodox, and Doumbe reacts, but he throws a left hook to the midsection, it looked like, or he tried to intercept the head, knowing that the takedown was coming. And Doumbe at the same time switches stances from parallel to orthodox, showing a lot of momentum for that left hook, but the opponent was able to get that double leg and angle off the corner. Now this is something that's not the greatest to see. Doumbe, while getting taken to the ground briefly, gives his back up to the opponent and pushes away at their head. So he pushes away to create some distance and quickly get up to his feet. He might be confident in his ability to spring up like a cat. Some fighters in the past relied on this, like Chuck Liddell for an example, was very quick to get up from the bottom, and he would do that instead of using the best technique possible, you know? He would just try to stand up using his sheer explosiveness. And that's what seemed like what Doumbe tried to do here, but when he couldn't push all the way and get away from the opponent, his back was there for the taking. Definitely not great, and honestly, it was his opponent's mistake of overcommitting for the back take, and Doumbe also did grab onto one leg, pulling it forward so his opponent can't get all the way on the back. But yeah, that was a scary position for Doumbe. So while he showed great sprawls, great takedown defense for the most part, there was that one, and it came off the pressure, it came off the switching of stances, so a little bit better of a setup from the opponent, and changing angles with it. So speaking about the takedowns, we do have to know of who his opponents are. His first opponent is not that experienced. He has like a few fights professionally. He's more of a coach than anything. He's been coaching fighters more than he's actually been competing in the sport. That is the first opponent we were talking about. Whereas Pawel Klimas actually does compete in the sport more. He has 6 professional fights, which is around what Doumbe has. And he's more of a well-rounded fighter. And he is younger, he's like 25 years old. But I really like what I'm seeing from Doumbe, man. There's a lot of inside slips on jabs so he can line up his own overhand right. A lot of times it didn't land. The reach of the opponent was giving Doumbe some issues here. The same inside slip overhand counter on the opponent's jab was also shown throughout the entire Klimas fight as well. So it seems like a go-to from Doumbe regardless of who his opponent is. But he did have excellent defense and rolling with punches, slipping with punches. Even if you're to see him in real time, it will look like the punch is landing on him, but he's moving moving his head with the punch always. He has extremely good reflexes, sees these punches, and they're even jabs, man. These are not like big strikes that his opponent is throwing at him. These are fast strikes just to touch him, and he's rolling with them. Amazing stuff from Doumbe. And that's why he started throwing the overhand, because he was so confident in himself to slip on the inside of those jabs. Ever so slightly, he would try to connect them with his own counter. And notice when he rolls with these punches, his head is moving just with it. He keeps a very small distance between his head and his opponent's punch. That's elite striking defense right there. Most of even the best UFC fighters cannot do that. And when he has the opponent close enough, he lets his power out there. He got caught with an elbow behind the head after the takedown attempt, and from that position, he just started swinging big on the guy, landing some big shots, getting him stumbling backwards. That's the power Cedric Doumbe has, but he doesn't throw it that often. He'll only attempt that way when he sees the opportunity is there. For an example, like right here, he would go to the body in order to condition his opponent for an overhand up top. The body punches are nice, man. 1-2 to the body, jab cross, and notice how he steps on the opponent's foot to keep him in position for the jab, and while throwing out the jab is going to allow him to line up the right straight to the body as he steps off of the foot and steps in further into the opponent to line up that good right straight to the body. The opponent is trying to catch him with a check left hook, does catch him, but Doumbe is moving his head with the punch, which is going to decrease that kind of impact. And just like I mentioned before, always notice his lower stance. It makes it pretty difficult for the opponent to know if he's going to attack up high or attack to the midsection with his hands. Because look at his stance right here immediately afterward. It looks like he's facing the body again. That's how low his stance is. And while he throws his punch, the opponent goes for the exact same counter, check left hook, just like he did last time, and moves into the right hand. Now against the right straight to the body, this is more risk averse than doing it against an overhand to the head, walking right into the punch and it just grazes his temple. That was the power shot. He knew he was able to condition his opponent from that right straight to the body with a similar stance, targeting the midsection, but this time goes up to the head. But he did notice that the opponent was getting away from his overhands, so instead he adjusted and was trying to take his head off with the left hook instead as he steps in with it. Those punches were missing as well, as he was really telegraphing them, swinging big instead of throwing them in tight, and that's the reason why his opponent was able to move away from that left hook. But things switch up at the end of the fight, where Cedric adjusts again. Every time something goes wrong for him, he addresses it and does something a bit different. This is the experience coming from kickboxing against the best strikers in the world. So now he doesn't wait for the opponent to throw first. He fakes that overhand right, and he wants to get the opponent to react. And the reason why he did this was, he wasn't just trying to feint with his hands. He was using that in order to mask in a step. Notice how he steps while he fakes that overhand right, but the opponent doesn't really move much. He gets the opponent to focus at the potential punch. And what does his opponent do? He wants to counter him with his left hand again, but Cedric was onto it this time. So there was a second step while the punch was coming at him. Notice how much further Cedric is moving into his opponent than his opponent is moving away from him, because Doumbe is making an effort here to get into his own range more than anything else he's trying. So he swings that big left hook and it just misses. He was not in the correct range. The opponent didn't really have much of a reaction to the left hook. Notice from the beginning, the opponent always had that right hand up to his head. He was always cautious to defend himself, but his right block rises after the left hook misses. This is a clear indication showing that his opponent did not see what Cedric was doing, but it doesn't matter at this point. Doumbe is still making his way in. He's still getting into his range, and now he's there. Throws up another left hook that gets precisely behind the guard. Throws a right straight up high, but gets intercepted by a body kick, which is not going to allow him to dig in all the way with his right hand. Good maneuver from his opponent, but this is where you see the difference. So he went up high with those huge strikes, a lot of power getting thrown at his opponent, and when the right hand shows itself again, his opponent thinks he's going to come up to the head, exposing the body, because all of that just got fired at his head. He is very cautious on blocking up high, and he gets hit to the body, which hurts him, man. You could see the reaction, did not like it at all, and Cedric Doumbe is on him to finish off the fight. It's that inside slip again on that jab, allows him to clear the range, get right into the opponent to throw in a left body hook, but the opponent does a good job of actually blocking this one with the correct defense. So as you can see, his opponent is really keen on blocking his body now. He's hurt there, he knows Doumbe is going to try to attack it again, but Doumbe now has to make a distraction, get that guard away. So instead of just keep targeting the body, he's going to have to condition him again by throwing something up high with a lot of power so he can open up the body again. Wings in a punch, and it was a reckless punch. If this was a better striker, like let's say Leon Edwards or Shavkat Rakhmonov, someone who has good counters, he may have gotten hit for that, but he only did it because he had his opponent hurt. And from there, he throws up a flying knee to the body, crushes the opponent and finishes him off. And now about the finish against Klimas, his most recent opponent, just conditioning setups. He has that low stance, head forward, throws a jab up high, connects right through the guard again, sends his opponent back a bit, then targets the body. The opponent actually saw this one coming but late, looked to parry it outside, and that's the condition right there. He knew that his opponent would block low very quickly. He blocked his midsection faster than he blocked up to the head, and Doumbe knew this now. So when Doumbe steps in to throw the left hook up top, he does lower his level just slightly enough for his opponent to think it's going to be another body shot, and his stance being relatively low is always going to make it tough for the opponent to know if he's going to go to the body or go to the head. But he swings around as look at his opponent's right hand, comes down to block a body shot. There is the opening for the left hook, and that practically finishes off the fight. Massive power from Cedric Doumbe puts an end to his opponent, giving him his second loss. Before this, his opponent was 4-1, now he's 4-2. Overall, a very good performance from Cedric Doumbe. Shows some takedown defense there, his willingness to try to take the opponent to the ground, and some really good striking setups. Decent defense as well, and man, I would be so mad if he doesn't get into the UFC. If he goes to Bellator, I understand if, the pay is there, because that's the reason he said he would go there, but man, I want to see him in the UFC up against better fighters. It would be pretty cool to see him fight like Douglas Lima or something. Michael Venom Page would be interesting. Those are actually really good fights, but most of the competition is just not the same.